All right, ladies and gentlemen, can I get everyone to go back to their seats? I'm sorry to rush you. I know the morning teas are delicious. I haven't had any yet. Do we have a like a countdown? I might have to do it manually. Let me do a manual countdown. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. We are going to have our first panel discussion for our conference, which is focusing on small business support. So we will have 3 speakers: the Honourable Dai Pharma MP, Minister for Small Business, and also Mr. Warwick Powell and Mr. Arthur Liu. Our moderator for this session is Mr. Andrew Fu. Andrew is the current president and founder of the Singapore Business Group Australia, a not-for-profit organization dedicated to facilitating trade and investment between Singapore and Australia. Andrew has, in the last 30 years, been engaged in international business across Asia, joint ventures, startups, market research, and small business mentoring. His passion currently lies in increasing Australia's competitive advantage in the global arena. Andrew is also a member of the Lawmakers Multicultural Roundtable. Now, Andrew, are you here? Yes. Andrew, I'll leave the stage to you then.
Thank you, Vicky, and welcome everyone to today's conference, especially those who have joined us on live stream as well. I'd like to begin by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land on which we are gathered today and pay my respects to their leaders and past, present, and emerging. And I'd like to also acknowledge that we have our speakers, the Honourable Minister Dai Pharma, who's with us, a member for Bulimba, Queensland, Minister for Employment and Small Business, and Minister for Training and Skills Development. The Honourable Minister also previously held the portfolio of Minister for Child Safety, Youth and Women, and Minister for the Prevention of Domestic and Family Violence. And so she's a very right person to be with us in today's proceedings. We also have Mr. Warwick Powell. Warwick Powell is founding chair of Smart Trade Networks, a blockchain technology development group focused on border trade flows. He is also an adjunct professor at QUT, where he works with industry and researchers to address pressing issues in digitalization and digital enablement of economic and social governance and development. He is the author of China, Trust and Digital Supply Chains, Dynamics of a Zero Trust World, in which he explores the impacts of blockchain technologies with Chinese characteristics on the future of supply chains and the contours of global commerce. Our third speaker is Mr. Arthur Liu, who is the Managing Director of Novotel Brisbane South Bank and the Director of Kinstone Developments. Arthur and his family immigrated to Australia from Taiwan more than 30 years ago, studying in Brisbane, in a Brisbane high school, and has been living in Brisbane since. With the dedication to create a better future for the Brisbane communities, he has been in the real estate development industry for 18 years. Arthur is also the immediate past president of the Buddha's Light International Association of Queensland. Will you please join me in welcoming them, and may I invite them to come up on stage and be seated at the table. As our speakers are making their way up to their seats, I'd like to congratulate QCF on organizing today's conference, and it can't be more, it can't be better than this, in a sense that the word empowers suggests to me the giving of an opportunity, the giving of a right, the equipping of people, of someone to have the right to be successful, to be happy, to be healthy, and to be prosperous. And so today, as we talk of support for small businesses, we recognize that 98% of Australian businesses are small businesses. We call them SMEs at some point. Now, SMEs are the backbone of the economy. And this is an economy not just in Australia, but in many other countries around the world. In 2020, SMEs contribute $425 billion to the Australian economy, or 32% of it. They account for more than 75% of value adding in agriculture and fishing, 74% in rental, hiring, and real estate, and the largest contributor in construction. As of June 30th of June 2022, 2.57 million are actively trading as small businesses at a growth rate of 7%, or an increase of 167,000 companies started, the result of a 19.7% of increase in entry rate and a 12.7% exit rate. So with that SMEs are the backbone of our economy, and the operating environment in which they are working in is one that's extremely challenging. They have to compete to survive in, such as the COVID lockdowns, the lack of funds, the cash flow challenges, rising operating costs, recruitment, selection, and retention issues, and much more. The question that we are looking at today is what can we do to support our small businesses to ensure their growth and longevity. So we are grateful this morning that we have three prolific speakers from both government and industry to speak to us and to share their ideas, and for us also to pick their brains. Now, may I urge you to hold on to your questions until the end of the presentations, after which we will have an opportunity for you to ask your questions. And when you do so, could you please introduce yourself and direct your question at a specific speaker. We have roving mics to go around, so there'll be opportunity for that. So without much further ado, may I invite our first speaker, the Honourable Di Farmer, to kick off with her speech. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Andrew, and I too begin by acknowledging the traditional owners of the lands on which we gather and pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging. I support a voice to the Australian Parliament of our First Nations people. I know there have been a number of acknowledgements through the morning, and I just just want to, go over a couple of those again. And firstly, can I just say congratulations to Vicky for doing such a great job. I met Vicky a few years ago, and it's just wonderful to see a young woman taking such a prominent role in such an important forum. So thank you, Vicky. I know we have a number of politicians here from both sides, or all sides of politics, and we had Curtis Pitt here, the Speaker of the Queensland Parliament. I know we have James Martin here, who's the member for Stretton. We've got Peter Russo, who's the member for Toohey. We have Brent Mickelberg here, who's the Shadow Minister for Small Business, and I think there have been a number of people here throughout. I think the Deputy Lord Mayor is coming as well. I want to acknowledge Daniel Wong, who's President of the Queensland Chinese Forum, and of course Andrew and my fellow panellists, and in fact I've known Warwick for 30 years, and so he actually asked me not to tell any stories, so I won't. But if you want to ask me afterwards. But can I also say it's just been lovely in the half an hour I've been here, and I can see more in the audience, to actually see so many friends and people I've had fantastic interactions with over the last couple of years who are really passionate supporters of small business, running successful small businesses, and just dedicated to making sure that the community thrives. So absolutely lovely to see you all here today. And look, can I congratulate the Queensland Chinese Forum on holding this event. I understand there are a range of topics, but to have a session which is dedicated to supporting small business is really critical. So for the Queensland Government, we knew when COVID hit that if we didn't support small business, our economy was not going to survive. And so it has been a major focus for us. We know there are nearly 500,000 small businesses in Queensland. They're the major private sector employees. So if we support you, then we're supporting Queensland and Queensland economies. And of course, you're such important parts of your local communities as well. You're the heart and soul often of your local communities. It's why during COVID, we allocated, it was about $2.5 billion in support to small business in grants and loans and subsidies, look, a range of legislative changes and reducing red tape and other assistance programs. And of course, that assistance was very much how do we support businesses to survive? And I just acknowledge how challenging that was for small business, challenging for everyone in Queensland, but particularly for small business. And but of course, during that time, there were also many businesses which actually thrived. They grew, and we were there to support them as well. But coming out of COVID, we need to know that the way we are focusing our support now is geared to where we're going for the future. There are still some challenges for small businesses, and I want to talk about those briefly. But we need to make sure that we understand what small business needs to thrive and grow now over the next 3 years. So we've had one strategy for 3 years. We've actually gone out with a survey recently to say, okay, what do we need to be doing to support you now? And that will form our next 3-year strategy. But I want to talk to you about the range of, very quickly, the range of supports that we do provide to small business. Then I want to talk to you about what we hear are the biggest challenges, but also how we can make sure that we are supporting small businesses from culturally and linguistically diverse backgrounds as well, and how we specifically are doing that, but to make sure that we're meeting your needs, and particularly in the way that we engage with you and you engage with us. So this is a very, very quick scan through the sorts of things that we provide, and encourage all of you, if you don't know the Business Queensland website, please write it down and Google it, and this will all be there. So most certainly, we provide an ongoing program of grants, which are anything from being able to, buy in some outside expertise to help your business to grow, to buying new equipment, to how you can actually employ new staff, and obviously skills shortages are a big issue, but a range of grants programs that can help you with HR, marketing, IT, business models, that whole range of things, and that is permanently funded. We have a small business commissioner, who we appointed, who is there to help with a whole range of things, but particularly around leasing disputes. And we know that particularly when mortgages are high and rents are going through the roof, certainly during COVID and now, we are getting quite considerable number of inquiries about how people can manage their rates going up. We have a small business health and wellness program. We've had, and it's probably one of our most popular programs, knowing that for small businesses there are mental health challenges with just dealing with the stress of small business, and so we are there with counsellors, we're there with grants, we're there with support from your local chambers of commerce to make sure that you can actually, as the Mental Health Commissioner says, you can actually stop the small problems from turning into big problems. We have a procurement target for small business in Queensland so that 30% of all government business must go to small businesses. So we're actually at around, I think, 28% now, and we have programs to actually show small businesses how you can actually engage for a government business. I have a Queensland Small Business Advisory Council, so nothing that we do for small businesses Queensland happens by accident. It is directly from feedback from small businesses. It is a very diverse council, and my number one criteria was you have to be a business owner operating right now day to day who understands the issues. And I want to particularly acknowledge Jennifer Chin in this context, who runs a business on the Gold Coast called Cool Crates, and she has been absolutely invaluable, particularly in actually talking to us about the interests of the Chinese community. We have a business launch pad, which basically means that whatever you need to do at whatever level of government, if you're starting up a business or you need a new initiative and you need to know all of the government regulations, we've all spent many hours of our life, we're never going to get back, navigating government departments and being shuffled from one program to the other, and one person, it's not this person's job or that. This Launchpad now operates across Queensland for every level of government, and it's a one-stop shop for you to find out what all the government regulation is. We have a small business friendly council program, so wherever you are across Queensland, there are 54 councils, which is the majority, who are actually geared towards making sure their operations are friendly to small businesses. And the last one I want to just point you out to is our Queensland workforce strategy. Skills shortages are the number one issue being raised with us by businesses large and small. And so last year, the Queensland Government held a Queensland Workforce Summit and delivered a workforce strategy, and I was very particular to make sure that small business was represented in that whole forum and in the strategies we have going forward. We know that recruiting the sort of workers that you're used to getting, it's just not possible anymore, and so we've appointed industry workforce advisors who work with individual small businesses to work out how can my business, not just any business, but how can my business best recruit in this environment? How can I create a workforce which actually keeps those people? And how can I actually structure my workforce, whether it's flexible working hours, 4 days a week? How do I do the work from home thing so that you've actually got people willing to stay there? And I really encourage you to go to our website and look at what's available there. We have grants of $5,000 for you to then hire in an HR expert to sit down and work with you and put some structures in place. So Andrew, that is a very, very quick summary of the sorts of things we do. I was asked to speak about the current challenges, and can I say the cost of living and skills shortages are the things which small businesses are talking to us about the most. But now, with all of that range of product, we need to make sure people know about it. And so we've actually contracted Ernst & Young to undertake a engagement piece for us on small business support for CALD communities. They're going to be embarking on that pretty soon. We'll want to work with major bodies like the Queensland Chinese Forum to get input into that. But we know there are particular challenges for people in the CAL communities, not only to access our products, but to make sure we've got products which are actually appropriate and really supportive to you. So I really urge you, please go and fill out our small business survey so we know what you need in general. But I'd really love to have as much input as possible from the forum, but also from all of you, to how can we support you as a small business operating from a culturally and linguistically diverse background. So thank you again, and congratulations to all of you. I just have so much admiration for small business owners and just really looking forward to continuing to work with you.
Thank you, Minister, for that very succinct summary of what the government is offering and what are the issues that you're looking at. And I'm quite sure that members of the floor will have questions as you spoke. So do please note them down. And I'm very sure that the Minister will be pleased to answer your question at the end of the session. May I just move now to the next speaker, Mr. Warwick Powell.
Hello. Yeah, that's great. Look, thanks very much to Andrew for the introduction earlier. And it is a tremendous honour for me, actually, 30 years on, to be able to share a stage with my old friend Di Farmer. And hearing Di talk, hearing the Minister talk about the work that she and the government and the department are working on gives me tremendous confidence in terms of the future of small business in Queensland. The Minister did mention that we have known each other for 30 years, and I also won't spill any beans, but it did cause me to reflect upon something I was involved in 30 years ago, which has some bearing on what I will discuss with you today, and that was in 1993, the Council of Australian Governments commissioned the Queensland Government to prepare a report on the role of Asian languages and cultures education in Australian schools as part of Australia's economic future. And I had the privilege of being a member of the research and drafting team of what became in the end known as the Rudd Report. The committee that pulled that report together was chaired by Kevin Rudd, and that report concluded that Australia's long-term economic interests would be enhanced significantly by a national and state coordinated commitment to Asian languages education in Australian schools, so that we could cultivate a cohort of people who could engage with and communicate with people in Asia across the diversity of Asian countries in an effective manner that was linguistically relevant and culturally sensitive. The conclusions of that report and the rationale underpinning that report are, in my view, even more important today. Small business has opportunities in 2023 that it could only dream of in 1993. And those opportunities are possible in part because of where we are, close to Asia, and also because of the development of technologies that make it possible for small businesses to do things that they could never have done before. In terms of where we are, and it is, a little bit of luck of history, I guess, but Australia is now positioned as part of a region that is, without a doubt, the powerhouse of global economic growth. The IMF recently released its forecast for 2023, which indicated that 40% of this year's economic growth globally will be driven by China, 10% will be driven by the Indian economy, and in terms of the transatlantic economies, The US will contribute 7% and Europe 3%. A large part of the growth that is going to come to the world is going to come from Asia. Asian economic growth is also underpinned by a rapid expansion of intra-regional trade. In the course of the last 3 years, ASEAN has become and has sustained its position as China's largest trading partner, and vice versa. China, of course, is Australia's largest trading partner. The trade volumes that are taking place right across our region represents an opportunity for small businesses like there has never been. These trade dynamics are made possible because of the complementarity between our economies, the different stages of economic development that is evident across our regions, the different knowledges and skills that exist within our different economies. And importantly, through the advent of digital technologies that make it possible for businesses to engage with each other across boundaries at low cost and in incredibly fast and efficient ways. And again, I think back 30 years ago when we were talking about Asian languages and cultures education. In those days, I had a buzzer on my belt. I can't remember what they're called now. And I thought that was very advanced. These days, we have mobile phones with instant communications right across our region, where businesses can be done, where payments can take place with a push of 2 or 3 buttons. It simply wasn't possible 30 years ago. So technology is driving some important transformations that will open up the pathways for Australian small businesses to grow in ways that they could never have done so before. We're also seeing some important transformations in consumer patterns and expectations, and how that is going to create opportunities as well. E-commerce has boomed, and e-commerce and the digital technologies underpinning it have made consumers and producers closer than they've ever been before. Small businesses today have the opportunity and the ability to engage directly with consumers across national boundaries and to build fan bases, if you will, of loyal communities who buy and support the products and the services that they produce. Small business today needs to take advantage of these digital technologies to reach consumers directly, remove layers from the supply chain, which ultimately means more value retained in the pockets of small businesses, and also deliver better services to consumers by using these digital technologies. Consumers also are looking for authenticated experiences. My generation would just go into a shop and buy something and really not pay too much attention to what it is, where it came from, who made it, what its impacts were. Well, my kids have made me change that attitude, because today's generations want to know where their products come from. They want to know the stories behind their products. They want to know who made them, what the ingredients were, and importantly, what the ecological and social impacts were of how they went about producing these goods and services. And small businesses actually have an edge in that space. So I'd encourage small businesses to think about building authenticated stories around what they do to build that value proposition to consumers. The last thing that I'll say is that small businesses also have the benefit of being dexterous, meaning that they can respond quickly to changes in the consumer landscape. And often we say that, small businesses are affected by a shortage of resource, and there is truth in that. But at the same time, small businesses have one of the greatest resources available to humankind, and that is the ability to respond quickly to the changing needs of our communities. So in conclusion, I guess my observations are that Asia is the growth powerhouse. We're fortunate to be part of that part of the world. Digital technologies have made it possible for small businesses to do things that they could never have done before. Small businesses can do them quicker, cheaper, and reach consumers directly. And so as we head into 2023, the time has come really to come out of COVID and grab the opportunities that our region offers for Australian small businesses and for small businesses that have those linguistic and cultural background capabilities to create jobs and wealth for our communities. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Warwick. I guess you're right in the sense that we are becoming very increasingly technology-driven. The competitive environment has changed so much that the pressure on the small business owner to respond to changes in the economy, in the environment, becomes more critical. And that challenge is exacerbated by the fact that small businesses are more resource poor than larger ones to respond. So based on all that, I think while the future looks really good, there are certain challenges that a small business minder has to take note of and gear himself or herself towards. So we'll probably discuss that a little later on. But for now, I'd like to invite Arthur to address the floor. Thank you, Arthur.
Thank you, Andrew, for your introduction earlier on. I'd like to also begin by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land on which we gather today. I pay my respect to the elders in past and present. I also extend my respect to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders people here today. Hearing the previous speakers and looking at the minister's outfit and Warwick's tie, I feel that I'm the least culturally sensitive people here. It's just past the end of the Chinese New Year period, so your outfit is just perfect for this occasion. And that's one thing, the first thing I learned from today. And thank you to the QCF team, Andrew, Daniel, Clement, and Vicky, and all your team for putting up together this great conference here. It's my honor, and I'm excited to be invited to participate in this event, because this is a great opportunity for me and for all the business owners to learn and to exchange ideas and thoughts and our experiences. Hopefully my contribution today will be helpful to some of you today. And as we all know, our economy is going through a volatile period of time. As mentioned before, skilled worker shortage is in extreme shortage at the moment. The interest rate has reached 10-year high. Worst of all, ever since COVID, everything seems to have changed overnight. All of these challenges have impacted small business more than medium or larger business, because inherently we are always lacking resources. We are always short of cash. We are always short-staffed. Now more than ever, small businesses are struggling to survive, as mentioned by Minister before. And making reasonable profit and sustainable cash flow seems to be next to impossible nowadays. We generally, and what makes things even worse is that small business owners often have difficulties finding a way to improve our situation ourselves. We generally understand our products and services better than anyone else. However, and also we are all full of passion to what we do. However, most of us are lacking the business knowledge and skills in management and finance, which are critical to identifying problems and implementing solutions. In the process of trying to improve our business, a lot of us even start to feel hopeless, feel desperate, and feel lonely. And that's exactly why QCF is arranging the Mental Health Forum this afternoon. And in order to successfully overcome these challenges and continue to grow, it will be always very helpful to have ongoing trainings. And this is what I learned from Professor here, because we always need the leadership from the government and the continuous training from educational institutions so that we can develop business skills and management skills, and more importantly, inner strengths. The key is to stay connected and continuously improve ourselves in the skills we possess, in the way we think, in our vision, and in our heart. Take this forum as an example. It is a good way of doing all of the above. And by being here, I'm sure we all are already successful small business owners, or becoming one in the near future. But this kind of community and industry bodies rely heavily on government support. It's great to see Minister Dai Farmer being here personally to share with us all the support government is providing. This shows how much value you put into small business, especially culturally and linguistically diverse small business. Thank you very much for sharing your view with us today. And also, I also would like to appreciate James, who is looking at his technology. He's been a great member, a local member of our community, because it's not only important for government to formulate all the support, but also to pass on this message so that all the members of the community get to know all the great support from the government. And James and also Peter have been valuable to our community. Thank you very much for doing that. And another type of important support to small business when encountering, and actually, sorry, I changed my things a little bit. But as I mentioned, government support has been a very important support to small business, especially when encountering major crises and major challenges. Why I chose the word major challenge? Because as a small business, we should not always rely on government support, especially financial support. We rely on government leadership, but we only rely on government financial support when major crises such as GFC or pandemic, or maybe when people start up a new business. That's a very important first step. And in other words, government support, financial support, should only be available and utilized for emergency situations. Most importantly, we need to embrace new challenges and always be ready and be positive about changing the way we do business. We are living in a fast-changing world. The only constant in our lives is changing. New forms of challenges will always and will continue to emerge every day. We need to build our inner strengths, and we need to develop our resilience. This way, when, not if, when new challenges arise, we will be ready and we will be able to respond quickly and turn crises into opportunities. Thank you very much and wish you all a prosperous and successful year of Rabbit.
Thank you, Arthur. You are right to say that we shouldn't rely on handouts. And I think business support comes in monetary and non-monetary forms. And if I remember correctly, Michael Porter once said that the government's role should be in creating the environment for growth and competitiveness. And I can see from what the minister said just now that there are many new initiatives within your basket of offerings for small businesses, and not all of them are handouts, and that's good. May I invite the first question from the floor then? Can we, well, the roaming mic's coming to you, and if you can introduce yourself and direct your question at a particular speaker. Thank you.
Thank you, organizers. My name is Leslie Bennett. I come from ECCQ. We have a stall at the side there, the Ethnic Communities Council of Queensland. My first question is directed to Minister Farmer. One of my jobs at ECCQ is to assist CALD organizations and individuals with their grant applications when grants are announced by the Queensland government. And one of the issues that I am faced with a lot of times is the language barriers that a lot of culturally and linguistic CALD communities face when they are trying to navigate the requirements of the grant applications. I would just like to ask the Minister if there are any strategies that you have to support clients with grants. What is the success rate and how do you evaluate how successful the organizations are in getting grants? And do you have strategies to support service providers who are working in this space to help more CALD communities and individuals? Thank you.
No, thank you. And that's a really important question. And can I just congratulate Ethnic Communities Council? I was out there at the end of last year doing great work with some Queensland Government funding to actually link employers who may not previously have employed someone from a CALD background to actually change the way they think, and just some fantastic examples there, so well done. And look, in fact, that question you asked is absolutely what we want to be looking at with this this engagement program that we've contracted Ernst & Young to do, that conscious that it's not just about language, just even something as simple as having translation facilities on our website, or on any materials. I think that's probably the most basic requirement. And we've got a lot of work to do in that space, I'm not afraid to say. But it's very much what is the best way that we can engage with CALD communities, and we really want to unpack that. I think you raised that issue of, as a support organisation, ECC can play an important role. I'm sure bodies like QCF can do it, and there are a range of others. I have to tell you, probably my biggest frustration as the small business minister in general is we have some just fantastic products, and which I get great feedback on. And the number of times I'll be going around Queensland, people say, oh, you know what you should have is this sort of thing. And I'll say, we've actually had that for 20 years, and but people don't know about it. But if you are also have language or cultural barriers, then, you know, that's even more difficult. So I am very keen to get the input of organisations such as yours about how could we do that? What's the best way to get to people? I mean, possibly it is through organisation, peak bodies, and because you know who your communities are. So I'm really keen for you to actually contact us and actually be part of that conversation. You know, we want by the end of this year to really have a good system in place, but it mightn't just be about the engagement. It might be, do we need a different suite of products that actually supports small businesses, CALD small businesses, that's actually different. We just have really got to explore that, and we see it as a big challenge. So thank you. It's a very good question.
Thank you, Minister. I think that's the point you nailed on the head, in the sense that you've got all these programs, you've got all these initiatives that are really, really useful and beneficial, but it's really not getting out to the community that everybody gets to know about it. I remember in the past where I'm told of a grant, and the word is you better get in quick, you know, because it'll disappear very quickly. And so I think limited resources is one. It is that roll-out communication, which is the other one. And I guess if Ernst & Young can come up with some ideas as to how that rollout, you know, can better reach the communities, that'll be really, really fantastic. Thank you. Next question.
Good afternoon, Minister. It was always nice to see you. And my question is, as Queensland government and federal government now in the same page, there is a major issue. I'm Galila Absalam from Iowa. Our organization provides support to newly arrived people as well as aged care and disability. As you're aware that there is a huge shortage in the employment in this sector. We always ask if we can get support for those who want to work in the sector, especially women, to get the driving license, because they can work across, but because of the cost of driving license as well as cost of getting car is huge. So I always ask if we can get that support to increase the employment among those who need work but they cannot work because of that. Thank you very much.
No, that's another friend I was very pleased to see today. Always lovely to catch up with you, and great work as well. And forgive me if I'm not answering all of this. I'm finding the echo. I'm not sure if I've heard all of it, but so please guide me if I didn't. You have actually hit on something that almost forms the essence of our workforce strategy. That we know in skills shortages really is the number one issue. In fact, the Albanese government, that Jobs and Skills Summit, was one of the first things they announced. I actually think it's an enormous opportunity for people who have faced employment barriers. I actually believe we can cross the Rubicon with this. Employers in general are, they're used to employing one kind of person. They always get this sort of person for the job. And those people are just not here anymore. But we know in Queensland there are about 180,000 people who would work part-time now but would like to work more hours, and there's about 175,000 who face employment barriers, including women, women with small children, people from culturally and linguistically diverse backgrounds, but also, people with disabilities, those groups with which we are all too familiar. And so one of the really big parts of our workforce strategy is to connect employers to those people who they may never have met before. You know, they may not know about the sorts of women you're talking about as potentially a huge part of a new and different workforce that they didn't know about. And in fact, our flagship program was to actually say to employer groups, not just one-on-one, not just, you know, someone who owns the shop down the road, but, you know, instead of one retail outlet, the National Retailers Association, instead of one hotel, the Queensland Hotels Association, and to connect them with groups such as yours, to go, well, you represent a group of people we don't know how to deal with, we don't know about, but we think you could actually help us fill our employment issues, but we might need to do some things to actually make that work. So what do we need to do? You know, how do we actually cope with language barriers in the workplace, and how can we make our workplace more supportive and culturally sensitive? If a big issue is that there are women who can work but they haven't got their driver's licence, how do we do that in a really practical way? So our programs are very much geared to the fact that there are women, exactly as you're talking about, who actually could work, would love to work. How do we make that happen? And, you know, a lot of the work we've been doing initially is about connecting people. So how do you know, meet with employer groups who I can tell you right now would love to know you, and how do we connect you? In fact, we had quite a big event at the end of last year. My department has a really formal name for it, but I called it the Speed Dating Forum, because it was literally, it was like hooking up those major employer groups, major organisations, major employers, organisations like this, and a range of people, people representing disabilities groups, to say, you groups don't know each other, but here you are, how can you work together, and what are the practical ways we can overcome any barriers? So that's a really good example of one, and we'd love you to follow up, if you can follow up with my office, and we'll actually put you in touch with people in the department. But I encourage anybody, particularly if you're representing peak bodies or employer organisations, this is a real opportunity, and my belief is that once you change the way employers think about who they can and could employ, and it's successful, you've changed their minds forever. And so that's opportunity forever. So I think it's very exciting. Yeah, so thank you. That's a really practical issue you're raising. Yeah.
Thank you, Minister. Just as a heads up, the Minister will have to leave in a few minutes' time. So, but before we go through the next question, can I just ask Arthur, from an employer's point of view, how do you reach how do you reach candidates in your recruitment program? Because I keep hearing that the industries such as yours are in need of people, and yet there are so many people out there who want to work but who couldn't find a job. So from an employer's point of view, how do you then reach these people who want to work? What methodologies do you use?
Well, we go through a more traditional way, like the Seek website, and as for the Novotel we are running, we go through the Accor Hotels Group. Of course, with the Accor Hotels Group's network, it's better to it's easier for us to find suitable candidates, because it's not only to reach to reach out to those who need to work, but also to the right people with the right skill set and right mind for this particular industry and this particular business. Because as we all know, the hospitality industry, again, you need the passion for this industry. Otherwise, the pay is just not that great compared to many other industries. Yes, so I guess this is the more traditional way, I would say, to answer your question, Andrew. But I just would like to take this opportunity again to rephrase what I just said. What I just said before, the financial support, of course, is important for the crisis and when challenges arise. But of course, what the government of all levels have been doing in the normal time is actually making sure that small business survive challenges when crises arise. Because only when we have stable and continuous growth in good times, then we accumulate enough resource to fight against the battles that we face when challenges arise. And back to your question, Andrew, another method we go through is through the training institutions. We work with a few training institutions. To be honest, it's hard for us to filter out all the applications ourselves day to day. So it makes more sense for business like ours with limited resources, to have the training institutions filtering for us, so that the students they send to us are passionate about this industry, and they are trained for this industry. So I guess it's all combined: the government support, the trainings, and the business. That's what makes as ministers mentioned, we need to all be connected, so that it will be a more effective and efficient way of for the employment market. Thank you.
Thank you, Arthur. We have time for the last two questions. I'm told there's one last question. Sorry, guys. Last question, and that goes to Daddy.
Hello, my name is Debbie Lodine. I'm here from the Gold Coast and I wear many hats. One of my hats is I work with Warwick, actually, educating and promoting emerging technologies. Sorry, this is very loud. I'm one of the directors of the Gold Coast Innovation Hub. I also, I'm a co-founder of a gin company, so Paradise Gin. And I work, obviously, with the multicultural communities on the Gold Coast. My question is, one of the biggest barriers for small business is red tape. So in the last few years, the number of, there's more and more hurdles now than there ever was before, especially if you're running a new business like mine. How can we, 2 years ago, CCIQ did a report on the enormous amount of red tape that we have to go through with small business. Has anything come from that? Are we looking at that? Because it really is difficult, and for the CALD community, it's even worse. So obviously, I was born here. I'm 5th generation Chinese Australian. It's hard for me. So imagine someone that's just come from overseas. Thank you.
No, thank you. And it's a perennial question and something that is constantly in our sights. Just in terms of businesses who come from culturally and linguistically diverse backgrounds, I just reiterate what I was saying before to our friend from ECC, that we specifically want to look at challenges for CALD community. And I'm just thinking, I can't see where Daniel is, but we might actually talk to the forum just about how we can formally make sure that members, actually have some input into this process that we're going through. Look, there is a lot of work that is happening around red tape, and I just want to talk about a few of those, and I think the one with the biggest potential is actually our Queensland Small Business Friendly Councils program, and I mentioned that before. There are 54 councils across the state, and often for small business, and I recognise that it is for all levels of government, But often for small business, it is council red tape that can actually stop them from their day-to-day. And I want to give you an example. What we're doing with each council, they have to, in order to get status as small business friendly council, they actually have to commit to a series of reforms which might be different for each council. But I want to give you an example of the very first cab off the rank to give you an idea of what we're talking about. So Ipswich City Council, don't know if any of you are from here, was the first to take it up. And they decided that they would just do a snapshot, just pick one area, just as an experiment. So they focused on food truck licences. And at the beginning, if you wanted to set up a food truck, and this is a very populous micro business, which I think everyone's finding. If you wanted to set up a food truck business, it would take you 6 weeks to get the licence, and you would have to speak to 8 different government departments. Now, I had a small business for a few years, and the thing that brought me to tears each time was that kind of scenario. So they just focused on that and how they could streamline things. And as a result, if you want to try for a food truck licence now, you speak to one department and it's a 48-hour turnaround. They were so shocked by what they were inadvertently doing to those poor people who were applying for food truck licences that they are now steadily working through every single part of their business in an interaction with small business to go, well, because they had no idea, of the impact. But because they have that focus on that, they are now really completely changing the landscape for small businesses. And that's not only, of course, just the time is money, might be the difference between something doing it and not, but it is the psychological. We were talking before about mental health, and you cannot overstate the issue of mental health for small businesses. I was up in another place, and I won't say where, talking to a group of small businesses about this initiative, and their council was just about to come on board, and this young couple who have a small business, they said, Minister, if you can get our council to take that on, we will never apply for any grant, loan, subsidy. You don't need to do anything else. In your whole life, do nothing else for small business except stop us from having to spend 12 hours a day, on the phone, talking to people who then palm it off onto someone else. And so the effect of that, and look, there are so many great stories, is going to be massive. Our business launchpad that I talked about before, because I think often in government we can be sort of a bit guilty of this. You think you've got to change legislation, and often you do, and we did that through COVID. But what I hear the most is it's these really practical things, and it's more about how you get access to the information, how you can, observe those processes smoothly. And our business launchpad that I was talking about earlier, which is the one-stop shop to say, okay, you want to set up a business in construction or food preparation or whatever, and, it's not for the faint-hearted working out what business, what you have to do to comply. Instead of going through that whole process and just being totally stressed about it, you just go to this one website, and every single thing you need to do for any level of government, and who you need to speak to, and what legislation, and what's the compliance, and what other requirements is there in one spot. We haven't got it for every single sector now, and I'm going to start saying it, I'm going to get it wrong, but it is basic. We started off with construction, but it is now rolling across every sector. The feedback we get on that, about the weeks that it saves, but also the mental anguish and time, because small businesses, it is time. You have to be the IT expert, you have to be the HR expert, you have to be the business manager. It is time, and then you have to live your life. So those are the kinds of really practical things. Can I just say also, the Queensland Small Business Commissioner And we appointed a temporary commissioner during COVID and have just appointed a permanent commissioner, Dominique Lamb, who used to run the National Retailers Association. Her job in particular and her team is to actually look at disputes and red tape around leases, tenants and landlords. However, she is also, that is her task as well, to help navigate around red tape. And her office is very accessible, and we want people to ring and talk to her, and then she advises me on government processes and any other ways that we can actually, in a practical way, and I'm very focused about the practical things we can do. I'm really delighted about those two particular things that I just talked about now, but always open to doing more. And look, I'd love to think there's a world where red tape is not a challenge anymore. I think I would be accused of being Pollyanna if I said that, but please know it is always in front of us, and we are always open to so don't just tell us what the problem is, tell us what the solution would be for you as well, and I say that to everybody, Andrew. Yeah.
Well, on that note, we will have to conclude the session. I'd like to thank everybody for their contributions, especially the Honourable Minister for that very enlightening session in sharing her experience and her policies with us, and for Warwick Powell also, and for Arthur. While the Minister has to leave, both Warwick and Arthur will still be around. So do have a chat with them and pick their brains and ask the questions that you have in your mind. Well, on that note, thank you once again, and all the best, everyone.
Thank you. I know we do have a lot more questions from the floor, which means we have done the right thing and we should do it more and allowing more time for the discussion. Now we're going to also draw a prize, which is donated by Novotel Brisbane South Bank, a $200 accommodation voucher, and also $100 food and beverage voucher. Can we draw it now, please? Everyone, please find a seat, because we're going to draw it according to seat numbers. So find your seat, otherwise you will have no chance to get the prize. So one from each. Yeah. And this is row E. Row E, come on. And then what number? 18. Number 18. E18. So if it's an empty seat, we give it to the closest one in the same row. E18. Who is on E18? Anyone the closest? That means it's not on the same row. The closest one on the same row. The lady. Yes, yes. That's you? Yep. You can have present it.